Shauna, he was pulled back a little bit to a more comfortable position where he was in more of a horizontal position, but there was still 16 feet of that tight tunnel he was stuck in for him to get out of before he would be truly free to be able to leave the cave.
A Nutty Putty cave is the story of John Jones, a 26-year-old medical student who was exploring a dark, twisting cave. His headlamp was the only source of light, casting shadows on the rough walls around him. But suddenly, one wrong turn he took changed everything for him, forever. Nutty Putty Cave was founded in 1960 in Utah by Dale Green and his friends. This was an amazing place, like a twisting maze with tight passageways and narrow tunnels, almost as if it was made to test the courage and skills of anyone brave enough to enter. Word spread quickly about this cave among thrill seekers, who were excited by the challenge of its sharp bends and surprising paths. The entrance also seemed welcoming, giving explorers a sense of adventure ahead. But it didn't take long before the roomy entrance turned into a cramped space where even breathing felt restricted. The cave's most well-known sections had names like the Birth Canal and the Scout Eater. Based on what other explorers had experienced, these names hinted at just how tough and challenging these parts could be. For experienced cavers, these spots were important milestones, places to push themselves and see if they could handle nature's complicated and stubborn layout. And for beginners, the cave was a place where small mistakes could become lessons, or sometimes lead to much scarier situations. This was also true for John Jones, the man behind the story. John Edward Jones was more than just someone who loved adventure. He was a caring husband to his wife, Emily, a father to their young daughter, and a hard-working medical student with big goals for the future. John's love for exploring started when he was a kid, because of family trips that took him deep underground into caves. These adventures brought him joy and helped him bond with his family. Mom, dad, and siblings all shared in the fun. Now, as an adult, John's life was filled with many duties. He spent long hours studying and taking care of his responsibilities as a new father. Exploring caves became a way for him to go back to those simpler, happier times from his childhood. Then, on November 24th, 2009, John found a chance to relive that exciting feeling he had missed. He made plans to visit Nutty Putty Cave with his brother, Josh, along with some friends and family members. The day was supposed to be fun and filled with laughter, good memories, and the thrill of exploring the cave once again. But soon, what started as an adventure took a terrible turn that would deeply impact everyone there. The group entered the cave with high spirits. Their flashlights pierced the darkness, lighting up the wet, rocky walls and casting shadows that seemed to dance with every movement. The atmosphere was filled with excitement as they took in the sights around them. They joked and chatted, their voices echoing off the stone walls. John walked confidently through the familiar passages, feeling more excited with each step. The smell of damp earth and the cool air made everything feel even more real. As they went deeper, the passages got narrower. The excitement of exploring grew as they squeezed through tight spots, where every inch felt like an achievement. John spotted a challenge he wanted to try, a narrow passage he thought was called the Birth Canal. It was a popular spot where cavers tested their skills. John had no idea he'd taken a wrong turn. The passage he entered wasn't the familiar route called the Birth Canal. It was an unmarked path that got tighter with every step he took. At first, John was excited, but that excitement quickly disappeared as the passage started closing in around him. He kept pushing forward, bit by bit, feeling the rough rock scrape against his skin. The tunnel sloped downward, making him crawl in a head-first position that felt uncomfortable. Soon, he realized he was completely stuck. Panic started to set in. He tried to go backward, but there wasn't enough space to move. It was as if the rock had trapped him, each breath making his chest feel even tighter. He called for help, his voice echoing through the narrow hallway. His brother Josh was close by and could hear the worry in John's voice. Josh crawled quickly through the winding paths, his heart pounding. When he reached John, he saw the serious situation. John's body was stuck tightly, unable to move at all. The space was so tight that even trying to help him was difficult. Josh tried to stay calm as he talked to John, telling him they would find a way to get him out. But it was clear that things were out of their hands. With no other choice, Josh quickly moved through the narrow passages and hurried out of the cave to call for help. He dialed 911, his voice filled with worry and urgency. The operator picked up, and within minutes, the message reached rescue teams who knew all about the dangers of this cave. The first responders were well trained, but even they couldn't have predicted the challenges they would face when arriving at the cave. The entrance to Nutty Putty Cave quickly turned into a busy scene. Emergency vehicles gathered outside, their flashing lights cutting through the dark. Rescuers were getting ready to face one of the hardest challenges of their careers. They knew they were up against the clock, with John trapped in a tight space and already stuck for a long time. Rescue teams crawled into the cave, carrying with them the tools and equipment needed for the mission. The journey to reach John was slow and difficult. Each rescuer had to squeeze through tight corridors, sometimes on their stomachs, with rock pressing against their shoulders. The deeper they went, the more claustrophobic the environment became. By the time they reached John, nearly 6 hours had passed. Even in this challenging environment, the rescuers were determined, relying on their training and teamwork to push forward. Facing the impossible, the scene that the first rescuer saw was serious. John was still awake, but the pain and tiredness were obvious on his face. He spoke to the rescuers with effort, showing amazing courage even though he was hurting. The rescuers quickly looked over the situation. John's body was stuck head first and at a tilt that made it nearly impossible for him to move. Worse, being upside down meant that gravity was working against him. Blood was collecting in his head, causing dangerous pressure. The team knew they had to act quickly, but every move had to be exact. The angle at which John was trapped made every movement critical. Even the smallest wrong step could cause severe injury, adding to the already dangerous situation. The plan to free John. The rescuers began setting up a pulley system. This would be their best chance to pull John out without causing further harm. They drilled into the rock, creating anchor points to secure the ropes. The sound of the drill echoed through the cave, a harsh reminder of how serious the situation was. The team worked tirelessly, taking turns and communicating back to the entrance to keep everyone informed. The hours stretched on, making the rescue a test of patience for everyone involved. John's voice grew softer, but he still managed to talk to the rescuers. He told jokes and shared stories, trying to keep everyone's spirits up, even as tiredness took over. The rescuers were impressed by his strength and felt even more determined to get him out. Despite his exhaustion, John remained positive, using humor and stories to keep the atmosphere light, showing his incredible strength in such a dire situation. After nearly 24 hours of hard work, the pulley system was finally set up. The team started to pull, slowly applying pressure. John felt a shift in his body, and a spark of hope lit up in the dark tunnel. But then, without warning, there was a loud crack. One of the anchor points gave way, and the pulley system broke. The team was thrown back, and John's position got worse. The sudden jolt made him even more stuck, and the heavy disappointment hit everyone hard. The team quickly regrouped, their faces lined with fatigue and worry. They knew that the time they had was running out. John's breathing became more shallow, his responses weaker. The rescuers tried to reassure him, but they could see he was slipping away. Rescuers worked non-stop, trying different methods to make the tunnel bigger or move John's position. Messages were sent to John's family waiting outside, giving them updates that grew more and more worrying. At this point, the rescuers felt the weight of the situation fully, knowing time was slipping away. Each passing minute felt heavier. Inside, the rescuers talked to John, hoping that hearing their voices would help him keep fighting. But as time went on, John's strength weakened. His words became quieter, and his breathing slowed. Despite the tireless efforts of the rescuers, John's body could not hold on. After nearly 27 hours of being trapped, John passed away. The news was a wave of sadness that spread from the cave to the people waiting outside, and those who had followed the story with hope. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the whispers of those trying to process what had happened. The impact of John's loss reached beyond the cave itself, touching the hearts of many who had followed the efforts to save him. John's body was too deeply stuck for a safe recovery. The decision was made to leave him in the cave. Nutty Putty Cave was closed off, turning it into a quiet resting place and a spot for remembrance. The decision to leave John where he was became a permanent part of the cave's history, making it a somber landmark. For the caving community, this was a heartbreaking moment for them, and they said John Jones will always be remembered as a man who dared to live a full life, one who loved adventure and exploration. Do you think it is worth it for you to risk your life for caving? Share your thoughts in the comment section.